Hey there, what I see is people letting their businesses run their lives versus them leading their business to love their life. I see this in corporate jobs, and I see where we step into expectations that other people have of us that do not honor us and allow us to lead our own life. Welcome to this episode, and I'm glad you're here to listen. From the corners of my mind is where I find my sanity. Hey there, welcome back to another episode of Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. I am really excited today to have my friend Sarah on with us. And Sarah, I've known Sarah now for a few years, and I think we met actually through an event that Misty and I did. And I can't remember, was that the one in Sandpoint or the one in Spokane?
Yes,
okay. In Sandpoint. And we became fast friends, and I followed her. She has a love for food and is a little bit of a foodie, and I am too. And so had followed her. And throughout the years, we just have kept in touch and have become friends. And one of the things that Sarah is really intriguing to me, and why I wanted to interview you today, was because sometimes as leaders in organizations, I saw this happen in corporate where everybody was like, oh, we need to develop people to move into the next role. When in fact, some people didn't want that. They loved what they did. They didn't want to be CEO of the company. And I run into people sometimes too that have this idea that they want to start a business, but it conflicts with what they truly want, which is a double bind, which listen to some other podcasts for that one. But where they have this bind, and that's interesting, my necklace kind of looks like that today, but like have this double bind where they're connected, where they say they want something, but yet deep down, that's really not what they want. And I know you've gone through that journey because you've made the conscious decision to leave a legacy in the world a little differently than what people would say. Like, because I work with entrepreneurs, but for me, the passion is helping people figure out what they truly want.
Yes.
And you came to this decision, and it's not about going and starting another business at this time, right?
Yep.
There's seasons. So I want you to introduce yourself, tell a little bit about what you have done in the past and how you've shown up to serve the world, and now how you're serving the world.
Absolutely. So yes, I'm Sarah, and it's so good to be here. Oh my goodness. Thank you for having me. I've been a fan of your podcast.
Thank you.
So it feels very fun and surreal to now be a guest on it. So I live in Spokane, Washington with my wonderful husband and 3 kiddos. We have quite the spread. We have a daughter who's 17, a son who's 13 and a half, and a son who is 7. So we literally have high school, middle school, elementary school. So our life is very full. That's something that Debbie and I have talked about, is we don't lead busy lives, we lead full lives. And just kind of, the words that we say and how we use them matter. And so a little bit of my backstory is that I did have my own business. It was called Gather and Savor, and it was in the food industry and space. I was a food blogger. I did events around food and foodies and gathering them together. I'm a huge local business advocate. I always say that about myself. Even before Instagram was a thing, if I found something that I loved, I would shout it from the rooftops the old fashioned way. And so I worked very heavily in that space for 4 to 5 years and poured my heart, soul, hours, tears, everything, all the good, all the bad, all the in between into that. And I loved it. And I was passionate about it. And then in 2020, what happened in 2020? The world changed. And I had already been having a gut sense and an inkling, and just that little feeling that it was time to step back, because I had from my business and get some perspective and really kind of take stock and decide if that's what I wanted to continue doing going forward. Because I had been in it long enough that, you can kind of start to lose some perspective. Yeah. And so, but then the pandemic started, and I'm a giant bleeding heart again, especially for local businesses. And the restaurant industry in particular really suffered because they already walk a razor's edge with their profit margins and with the capacity being cut back and all that. And so I basically kicked it into high gear and just poured and poured and poured. And by that November of 2020, I just decided, for my health, physically, for my mental health, I have got to step back. I have to finally do what I've been saying I would do for years and listen to my gut, tap into that intuition, and just step back to basically see the forest for the trees. I'm a big phrase person, so I'll probably be using a lot of those during this conversation.
So Sarah, really quickly before you move on,
yes,
you talked about how you had this feeling, how you had this like niggling. Is there something that happened that created that for you? Or can you describe
like a trick? Like,
and I don't know if you know your video's off. And
yes, sorry, I'm back.
That's okay. We want to see your bright shining face for those watching on YouTube. And so during that time, was there something that happened that kind of created a light switch for that? Or describe for us that feeling that kind of made you decide, I need to shift?
Well, like I said, I have been feeling it for a while. This could be, I don't know, maybe a whole separate podcast episode, but basically what it started to happen was I felt like Instagram, because that was my main platform, was my life rather than my life fitting into Instagram. And that was a huge red flag for me when I realized that. But I kind of didn't want to really admit it for a while. And when I finally did, that was, I would say, yes, a catalyst of sorts to be like, you don't have a choice. You've got to step away. And what's so interesting is that it took me about 6 weeks because I wanted to obviously finish up commitments and, all of that. And so I started to tell people through my Instagram, I'm going to be stepping away. I need to take a break, this and that, and thing. And it was so telling because so many people reached out to me and said things like, I wish I could do that. You're so brave. If only I could do that. And I realized, I'm not the only one who's being run by this.
Yeah.
I'm not the only one who is leading my life, not really leading my life, but living my life in a way where Instagram is telling me what to do rather than it's a part of my life. It's the part of the pie of my life. Right. So that was, I would say, probably the biggest.
Okay.
And when I let that drop in, as you say, that's when I said, okay, it's time. So let's cut to the next part.
What did you pivot to?
I basically have now been, I haven't gone back because I got the clarity I wanted and the clarity that I was looking for. And that is basically that while I did that for 4 to 5 years and I loved it and I was passionate about it, I no longer feel aligned with it. And again, it's funny. I see a pattern here. It took me a while to allow myself to really let that sink in and then claim, because I'm a loyalist, a giant loyalist. And once I commit to something, I will do it until the end of time. And so I really had to give myself what I call the grace and the space to say, you know what, Sarah, who you were even as a person when you started Gather and Savor and who you are now is different. Why do you expect it to still be lighting your heart on fire and all of that in the way that it did if you're a different person, and what you're going to do with your life is going to be different when you become a different person?
Yeah. And Sarah, that brings up like thoughts in my mind about seasons, right? Like, and sometimes we fight and we resist so hard this letting go of one season and moving into another season. And that point about giving yourself some grace. And I know some of that didn't necessarily come without a few scrapes and bruises along the way for you. But tell us, what are you serving? How are you serving in the world today?
So, okay. So yes. So part 2 of that story is that I realized that I wasn't going to just rush back into something. And I have actually a quote that I'm going to read to you because this so applies. And this literally was me suspended between stepping out of something, but also not having something to step into right away. So I'm just going to read this really quick. I love this. It's from the book called The Dutch House. It's a novel. And it says, there are a few times in life when you leap up and the path that you've been standing on falls away behind you. And the future you mean to land on is not yet in place. And for a moment, you're suspended, knowing nothing and no one, and sometimes not even yourself. And so this past, gosh, how long has it even been now? Year and a half, a little bit more than that, has been this time of just giving myself, again, that space and that grace. And then 6 months ago, onto the game board comes this amazing opportunity for my husband to completely switch careers from working in corporate America to he's now a plumber apprentice on his way to being a journeyman. And that has completely changed the dynamic for our family because he is gone for 12 to 15 hours a day, 5 days a week. And he was working from home during the entire pandemic from March 2020 until 6 months ago.
That's
and
a big change.
It's been huge. And it's been an adjustment for all of us, all 5 of us. And so my intention and what I've been passionate about, especially the last 6 months, has been being a mom. And not diminishing that. Like you said, it can look living and leading your life in a lit up way can look very different for everyone. And there's no specific mold that we need to be in. And it has been a journey of self-love for myself, because I've also needed to take care of myself. I had some health things that came up at the beginning of last year. And it really has, as life often does, forced me to just slow and breathe, metaphorically and literally.
Yeah. Well, and Sarah, I want to go back because I know we talked a little bit before we started taping that, again, one of the reasons that I am so interested in talking to you today is because if I hear another woman or man say, I'm just a stay-at-home mom or I'm just a stay-at-home dad, I'm going to blow up because to me, that is harder than like some of the corporate jobs I've been in. And it's, when I say harder, I mean, it's super rewarding. At least I know you well enough to know that I'm speaking for you too here. You know, yes. I always say having a child for me has been the best joy. And even though my child is going to will be 30 by the time this airs, and I can't believe I'm old enough to have a 30-year-old, but that's a whole nother podcast too. But, you know, like ever since the day he was born, it's been an act of realizing and knowing how to let go.
Yes.
Like it's a constant journey in letting go, but it's, I don't know if I could have stayed at home. Like there is a definite, like it is a commitment, and it is, I mean, just as rewarding, can also be just as frustrating on the side end, you know, but I look at that, and when I hear that, I just cringe, and I correct people when I hear that and say, can I offer you a different lens?
Yeah.
Because it's not a just staying at home.
It's not
that is a really admirable thing.
Yes. I have also, I used to say that all the time of myself. And I very intentionally also eliminate it from my vocabulary. And like you, if I hear a friend say that, I, graciously say it's anything but just. There just does not belong in that sentence, because it is incredibly challenging and rewarding, all mixed together, a coexistence. And I mean, I just turned 42 last month, and I don't know that there's a more challenging anything in life than being an intentional, loving parent.
Yeah. And Sarah, I mean, no offense to my family and friends and others that are listening to this, but primarily family and friends that I know your children. Like I've told you this before, your 3 kids are the most centered, and I don't like to necessarily use the word balance. So like harmonized, like just good humans of any other kids that I've ever met. And I worked with high school students. So no offense to any of you listening, right? But like, and I look at that, Sarah, in the world that we live in today, and that is so needed, so needed. And so I see you as a model for other people that want to step into that as well, because their lit up life is stepping away from something else. Now, I also talk about when you're there, it's in presencing, and that's where that quote kind of took me to is you're in that theory you talks about that presencing space of you're never at point A or point B, because once you move away from point A, you're always in the middle, right?
Yes.
And it's about being present and saying, okay, what do I want my life to look like? What do I want to leave in the world? And there's so many different ways to do that. And the law of comparison says that there's no value added until we add value to something.
Yeah.
And so comparing what each person is meant to do, and particularly realizing the seasons to that.
Yes.
There are times when, for crying out loud, I'm not going to say how old I am other than I'm old enough to have a 30-year-old. Prior to that, I was working in corporate America and doing certain things and then stepping into my own business. I had the opportunity to step into my own business and didn't years and years ago. And how we come around to then what we're called to do, and different seasons call for different things. And so I don't know, there's a whole lot in that, but I feel like you've stepped into a place that you feel at peace with, and that is showing the fruits, because not only that, but you and Ryan are just great parents and were parenting well before this, but it's obvious in the way that your kids step into the world and how they show up. That's a direct reflection.
Thank you so much. I don't know that there's a better compliment I could get in my life. So thank you. I thank you so much. I'm humbled by that. And that's not to say that we do it perfectly, because, oh my word, it's far from perfect, but intentional, and as much as we can, heart-led. And I think that that's what makes such a huge difference. And I know we talked a little bit before the show, so I'm just going to add this. It takes a lot of courage to walk this path, because there is I would say, a way that success is defined, and a way that success can be, how it should look. And again, because I was in a space where it looked those things, right? And I stepped back and I said, no, I'm going to take care of my kids. Again, I've always been an intentional parent. I've always loved being a mom, but this has been my passion now, right? In this season. And to step away from, I would say, in many ways, the status quo. And again, that the world says, it took a lot of courage.
Absolutely.
And it took a lot of me following my gut, even though, it was like I was the salmon swimming the opposite direction in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
And I'm not, I know you know this, but since your audience, this is their first time meeting me, I'm not saying that from a place of pride. I'm saying that from a place of confidence, and realizing through, as I took the steps, how much it took courage.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was just like, okay, I'm taking the next step. And that's all that I have the courage to do. And I don't know where this is headed, but it's amazing how when the puzzle pieces get thrown in the air, which I did feel like the pandemic happening, it was a huge opportunity for all of us to step back and take stock and really get deep with ourselves and answer some hard questions, and maybe not like the answers we got.
Very true.
And I did that. And I am experiencing so much peace, so much light. That's not to say I still don't have my days and stuff isn't so hard. Right. That's being human. But just, as your podcast and your business, leading my life, leading a lit up life, even though it looks so different than it did 3, 4, 5 years ago. But I love the concept that our life can have different acts to it, right? Like just Absolutely. Like a play, you have your first act, you have your second act. My life may have 6 or 7, who knows? Yeah. And to be fully engaged and loving whichever act we're in, that's how I want to live my life.
Yeah.
So I know I'm
Absolutely.
just going off,
No, that's fantastic. And that's a great segue to say, check out the show notes if you would like to get in touch with Sarah. I know you have a heart for helping other people step into that. And if somebody wants to talk to you a little bit about what that looks like and some lessons you've learned along the way, to check out those show notes and see where you can get in touch with Sarah. And with that, folks, this is a wrap. And thank you so much, Sarah, for being here. And if any of you want to learn how you can work with me or just have a clarity call with me to get really clear about what you want your next steps to be, please reach out to me at www.leadyourlituplife.com and book a clarity call there. And I'd love to chat with you. So Sarah, with that, thank you so much for being a part of today. And we'll talk to you all in a week.
Thank you so much, Debbie. And yes, don't delay. Set up a call with Debbie. She's fantastic.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, everybody. See you later.
See the colors of the rainbow. Find your own kind of happy. See the colors of